In the moment, I was like, man, I'm going to be someone that's going to win a world title in their age group 6-7 months after a brain surgery.
It's like crazy to me how, you wouldn't have even found out about that if you didn't get hit by a car. Yeah.
But I could bet $1,000 that every morning I will be on my knees, absolutely bawling my eyes out.
It's Schmidy, back with another cut. What's your name and where are you from, bro?
My name's Kaiden Lieto. I'm 21 years old, and I'm from Kona, Hawaii.
Kona, Hawaii, bro. Kaiden, what's your passion, bro?
Yeah, so my passion is probably I just love sports. Number one, just always been a huge fan of sports. Always super athletic. But my main passion is triathlon, or the Ironman distance. So swimming, biking, and running.
It's legit. How did you get into being a triathlete and the Ironman and everything?
Yeah, so I got into triathlon kind of actually at a young age originally. My dad was a professional triathlete since I was born. So every year, starting when I was born in 2003, my family would go out to Kona before he lived out here, and we would watch him race in the World Championship. So I've been around the sport kind of my whole life. When I was super young, I thought I'd had a passion for it, but when we moved out to Kona when I was around 5 years old, I fell in love with surfing in the ocean, and that was kind of my main passion growing up in middle school and early years in high school. Then right around kind of COVID time when I graduated high school, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with my life yet after that. Mm-hmm. And I went and actually watched an Ironman for the first time in a while. COVID kind of shut it all down, and it was the first time I was actually old enough to enter a race myself. And since I was going through a gap year, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I just kind of set a goal and was like, I'll just do a race for fun to kind of keep myself busy. And that's how, that's kind of when the passion really started to show.
Come on, bro. Bro, that's so lit. So you've been around, your dad was a triathlete, yeah?
Yeah, so he was a professional until 2011 or 2012. He was one of, not to brag on, or I am going to brag on him because he's my dad. So
come on, yeah.
He was probably one of the best ever to do it on the bike portion. So, and his best ever result was second in 2009 at the World Champs here in Kona.
Hey, come on, dude.
So yeah, that's kind of my dad's story, and then his career ended in 2012 from an Achilles injury.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, bro. So like, being a triathlete, what's that like? What's that been like for you? Just throughout the years of being a triathlete, bro. Yeah,
so I've been in the sport now for about the last 3 years. 2022 is when I first started training. So basically a little bit of kind of my story and my journey. In 2022, I did my first half Ironman. So that's a 1.2 mile swim, 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and then a half marathon. So 13.1 miles of running. And the race went honestly way better than expected. I think pretty early on, just off of really only kind of 2 months of training, my fitness grew very quick. And I was a lot fitter than I think my dad and I kind of both thought, as my dad was my coach. So we started, I did that first race and it went really well. And very quickly after those 2 months in that first race, I started really kind of dreaming big and was like, I want to be one of the best in the world, just off of how much I love to train. And I think it would be a pretty cool job to get to train for a living. Every day you get to go out and be with yourself and just basically be one of the fittest humans on the planet. I think that's a pretty cool job. And so I kind of early on was like, yeah, let's kind of go for it. And so the goal quickly switched from just doing one full Ironman to actually more focusing on the half distance as I'm younger. And actually for a full Ironman athlete, you want to be a little older, like in your late 20s, early 30s is when you kind of hit your peak for the longer distances. So kind of switched our momentum and was more focused on the shorter distances.
Mm-hmm.
And going into early 2023, kind of had the plan set out for the year of what races I wanted to hit. And hopefully start winning some amateur races
Yeah,
in
dude.
the amateur ranks. So doing the amateur Olympic distance championships, national championships was in Milwaukee in 2023. But early in January, on probably my second or third training ride of the year, I got hit by a car. I was going straight, and a car turned and didn't yield. And I actually ended up T-boning the car, flipped over the car, broke my collarbone, and also got a really bad concussion. And
Dang,
so that
bro.
was, yeah, it was a big bummer for sure. But yeah, so that was a kind of a big setback. Had to get surgery a few days later.
Yeah, let's low key like pause on that, bro. Like, what was that like? You know, like that's not like what do you remember like from that? Like that's sounds like a crazy traumatic experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, not much to say on like the actual accident, but yeah, just afterwards, I remember being in the hospital, and I remember being super calm actually right after. Maybe it
Yeah.
was also the drugs that they put me on pretty early, but yeah, I was pretty calm, and I knew it was all going to be all right. And it adds story, and uh, yeah, I knew I needed to get surgery. I could just tell by how out of place my shoulder was.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, honestly, kind of where it was more traumatic was after the surgery. So a couple days later, I got that collarbone surgery, and as I was recovering, kind of started to have a lot of concussion symptoms. After I got hit, I was unconscious for about 6 minutes actually, so I don't remember too much of like right after the accident.
Yeah.
But the concussion symptoms after the surgery and slowly recovering kind of got a little bit more kind of alarming, I guess. I was dealing with a lot of just kind of sad moments, waiting to kind of get back to training. Wasn't feeling like myself, had a lot of like fogginess in my thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that was kind of the more traumatic thing, is I just didn't feel like myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's a little bit of that story. But luckily, at about 3 months, not even, so I got hit on January 6th, I believe, in 2023. And then March, I'm pretty sure March 30th, I did my first race of the year off of only a couple weeks of training, and was a really solid race. Ended up becoming state champion in my age group,
Hey.
and was, I think, third or fourth overall in the whole race. So yeah, it was another good kind of result. And so after that, I continued training. Really started to get some momentum into a big race that I was focused on in June, which was another half Ironman here on the island. And was still dealing with some concussion issues, was dealing with some kind of like, again, still not really feeling like myself.
Yeah.
Started having some, just kind of like some anger built up inside. Wasn't 100% sure what it was, and we kind of thought it was the concussion for sure that was still kind of causing all of that. And I ended up doing that race, the half Ironman. Probably still one of my best races to date. I ended up getting third overall, and was just a super solid race. And the next morning, actually, was we headed to Oahu to get a brain MRI to see if there's any brain damage from the crash. And they found something in that brain MRI that actually needed to get operated on. It's called a AVM, or a vascular malformation, basically, where my arteries and veins in one area of my brain didn't fully connect correctly. And if my artery sent too much blood to my veins, it would have caused an aneurysm, or like a brain bleed, and I could have had a stroke and probably died. Yeah, so it was kind of a big shock, I guess.
Yeah.
When I got the news, I kind of just was like, dang, literally yesterday, I probably got my heart rate as high as I've probably ever gotten it, and went as hard as my body could push, and my brain could have popped, but it didn't, luckily.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I guess kind of another thing there was kind of just like another setback, knowing that you need to get brain surgery, and not knowing exactly how long that recovery will be. But luckily, eventually, talked to some guys that knew a lot about that kind of the AVM, and they were like, yeah, we don't know exactly what or how it caught, like your body causes it to actually pop. So just kind of keep doing what you're doing. And so I kind of got the okay to go back and train.
Mm-hmm.
So started to train again and continued to race for the rest of the year. Everything was going pretty well, still racing pretty well. Had a couple good results, and kind of at that point, I started kind of gaining ground and was getting fitter and fitter. And I ended up getting 7th in the national championships that year, which wasn't my best result, but was still not too bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I started to kind of gain some traction of some sponsorships, and kind of got like a good team working behind me, and just, yeah, really felt blessed to have an amazing team, amazing group of people to support me, even though they know that I was going to get brain surgery eventually.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. And so fast forward to 2024, I got the brain surgery in March, and yeah, I got the brain surgery, went really well, got it all taken care of, and slowly started training up again kind of around June.
So let's just pause there real quick. Like,
yeah, that was a lot.
The brain surgery, like what was that, bro? Like,
yeah,
what was the procedure like? What did they go in there and do? And like,
yeah, so I guess like a little bit about the brain surgery was, at first I feel like anytime someone is operating on your brain, I think the fear of death kind of creeps in a little bit. Yeah, so that was definitely a little scary, but I'm a firm believer in Jesus and heaven, and what he's done for me. And so going into the surgery, I kind of was just in the place of like, okay, God, like, you write my story, and if my story ends here, and at least I'm going to be under anesthesia, and I'll wake up in heaven, and I probably hopefully won't feel anything, or I'll wake up and I'll be okay. And so that's how I went into it, and I had a lot of peace going into the surgery. They basically just cut the artery and they soldered it shut, and then they did the same thing on the other side of the malformation on the vein side, and then just took it out. And so the artery and vein are completely soldered and dead now, so they'll eventually kind of just shrivel up, I guess. They're not active or carrying any blood anymore.
And yeah, that stops it forever.
Yeah,
from ever bursting and causing you to have a stroke and So it
basically shuts off that kind of one section highway of blood, you could say, which doesn't really change how my brain works. There's tons of other arteries and veins that there's still blood going, so it wasn't that big of an issue. But it was a long surgery, 7 or 8 hours under. It was pretty wild, especially waking up too. But praise God, it all went well, and was back. Actually, it happened in Arizona, and was back here in Kona about 5 days after the surgery, 6 days after the surgery. So got out of the hospital really quick. Was super thankful for good doctors, and yeah.
It's like crazy to me how, you wouldn't have even found out about that if you didn't get hit by a car.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, like that's nuts. Like, you ever thought about that and like, maybe pondered that like with the Lord and stuff? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I have thought about that, for sure. I think, and as we continue and talk about kind of my story and all that, I think you'll kind of see, and I'll talk more about it, I guess, at the end of looking back on all the challenges and how each challenge individually brought, growth. And, I think of Romans 5 where it says, rejoice in your suffering, and, suffering, because suffering produces endurance, and characteristics and hope. So like, I feel like, through that I've gained a lot of, more character, definitely character building, and a lot more endurance, hopefully, to, as an endurance athlete, I guess, continue that too. So, so I guess, I've pondered a little bit about that, but, I think everything happens for a reason. So, trusting God, whether or not that was the reason why I got hit by the car, I will never know exactly, but, being That's grateful for that. And so then moving forward, I guess once the surgery was over, I was like, perfect. Like, hopefully, there's going to be nothing in my way anymore, and we're just going to keep it moving.
Yeah.
and really go full force and full at it. So I went out to Boulder, Colorado in June to train with some good friends of mine, also professional athletes, great guys. And so we had a fun house there's 4 of us in there, and we just every day just woke up, trained, and that was basically our life for about the first month out I was there. And quickly I really realized how fast my fitness was coming back. I went from the first week riding with them and just absolutely suffering, and then slowly getting to the point where I actually was feeling really good about a month in, and just my fitness and my body responded really well. And so it was really high hopes, I guess. And at this point, I actually learned that I got a local lottery slot. So Hawaii, the Ironman does a lottery system for local athletes here in Kona, or any island actually of Hawaii, to do the race here in Kona, which is like the mecca of triathlon. It's like the Super Bowl or the World Series or the NBA Finals. So it's a world championship.
Deal.
Yeah, it's a real deal. And I guess like even to start, my goal back during my gap year was to do this race. And I guess like getting hit by the car and the brain surgery really stopped that. But you could basically say I felt like God gave me, my goal. Like he gave me an entrance into that. And so I got the word that I was going to do the race. And so that was, I guess, the goal going into the back half of the year. And, in the moment I was like, man, I'm going to be someone that's going to win a world title in their age group 6-7 months after a brain surgery. And that was kind of how I wrote the story. And that was my motivation. And so I started training, in Boulder, and fitness started coming up really good. And kind of throughout, ever since getting hit by the car, I would get sick every 5 to 6 weeks. And it was the same small sickness. I would get sick for 2 or 3 days. And we wouldn't know what it really was. And, my dad, as my coach, we would, elaborate on it. And we would just think maybe we just pushed too hard too quickly back into training after, the surgeries that I had. But I got that same sickness in Boulder, and I basically had it. I've had it ever since. And I remember, I'll never forget, I was getting done with a 3-week block of training, of just kind of going all out with my body and just kind of giving it all I could to go into a rest week. And I was doing my last run, and something just felt really off. And I remember getting back in the car and driving home, and I called my dad. I was like, hey, I think I'm getting that, same sickness, but it's going to be all good. Like, I'm taking an easy week this next week. So if my body just needs that extra rest, I'll do it. And yeah, we're going to be all good. I'll be back, in a couple of days, but just going to take some time off. And he agreed.
Yeah.
But that sickness never went away. And so for about 3 weeks, I drove to every urgent care. I drove to, head specialists. I drove to nasal specialists, ear, nose, and throat doctors, because mostly I was having congestion and headaches. So I went basically to every doctor I could and wasn't really getting answers. Didn't have COVID, didn't have mono, didn't have strep. So I found a mold doctor right after going to like the ear, nose, and throat and not getting really any answers. And so someone referred him to me actually, and thought it was maybe worth looking into. So I did. And first thing was like we kind of tested to see if there was mold in the house in Boulder that I was staying at. Turns out it was full of mold. And so I was like, okay, that's probably somewhat the root of it.
Yeah.
And so I went to the doctor, and I moved out of the house. I moved into a different house for the rest of the time I was in Boulder, and started working with this doctor. And he thought I could potentially have this autoimmune disease called SIRS, or SIRS. It's chronic inflammatory response syndrome. It's just where your body inflames.
Yeah.
And it's a genetic disposition. So we started kind of doing some testing for that. And the testing would take about a month and a half to get back. And at this point, the race was 4 weeks out. So we weren't going to get the test back till after the race. And I was still planning on racing. Yeah, it was like my last day in Boulder, and went to a blood draw place and got 30 vials of blood for testing to get sent out. And so then I went home, and we were about 3.5 weeks out from the race at that point. So
yeah, bro. So the race, man, how'd that go?
Yeah, so pretty interesting story, and pretty incredible story, honestly. Is as soon as I got home, I got kind of right back into training. Like I was always trying to train, and some days my body would allow me, and some days it wouldn't. And yeah, and I started training, and I actually probably trained the best I've ever trained. I had a big session, a brick session they call it. So it was like I did like 85% of the bike course, and I did I did a run off of it as well, and it was probably the most fit I've ever been. I even looked back on it recently, and I was like, that should not have been as good as it was, like for someone that's sick, and yeah, so like going into the race, obviously it was a little stressful. You're doing a race at the highest level possible. You're going up against the best 18 to 24-year-old kids in America, or not in America, in the world, you know? And you're swimming almost 2.5 miles, biking 112, and running a marathon, 26.2 miles. Could take anywhere from 9 hours to 17 hours, depending on how your body felt. And for me, my body didn't feel that great very often. So, but, I did that one session when I got back, and I thought maybe like this whole time my mind was just playing like tricks on me, and I thought it was the altitude that was maybe causing it. But then I eventually I went for another run, and I just noticed that same feeling like I had that first time when I called my dad, and I was like, I'm getting sick again. And this was about 10 days out from the race now. And but when the sickness came back, it came back worse than it ever has. And I was so sick to the point where I really couldn't even get out of bed. And that lasted up until, we're at the point now, it's 2 days out from the race. And I've left the house one time, and I left the house, one time. I went to go swim, and I went to go pick up my race number, and like that's about it, and check in. And that's all I did in the last 10 days, And I was just like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this, like your body can barely get out of bed. And again, you're going to have to swim 2.5 miles, bike 112, and run a marathon. And you can't get out of bed. I don't even think I could have ran a mile at where my body was. And, I was praying, and I was like, hey, God, like, kind of what are you trying to speak here? Like, what's going on? And I just remember I just had like no energy anymore to even, pray for myself. And so I called up one of my good friends, Asher Bird, and his dad, Andy, amazing guys that, I'm super close with. And I was like, hey, if I drove up to your house, I got out of bed and I drove up to your house, could you guys pray for me? Because I can't do it anymore. I can't pray for myself anymore. I need someone else to do it. And so we prayed, and the next morning, it was now the day before the race, and I was able to get out and ride my bike for 30 minutes. And I went for a ride, and felt somewhat okay. Still definitely sick, but felt okay. And went to bed that night just being like, hey, I could wake up feeling okay tomorrow. I could wake up feeling like I can't get out of bed. And I'm just trusting God that whatever happens is like the way it's going to go. And so I woke up the next morning, race morning. And I mean, there's just something about race morning in Kona. The atmosphere is just the energy. There's so much energy in the air. There's so much, you can just feel the pressure that everyone has on themselves. And you can feel the anxiety or the nerves that's that's in the air. And, everyone's racking their bikes at the pier. There's over 2,500 athletes all getting ready to do the same race. And there's just no feeling like it. And I just remember waking up and getting down there, and I just felt like this peace, and I felt okay. And I felt like I just felt this peace that I was like, you know what, like it's going to be a good day. And I just was just kind of going through my normal morning checklist of like, let's get it rolling, and let's do it, and playing my worship music in my ears, and just really just by myself. And I think one thing that also got me just so, I guess, not in love with the sport, but one thing I just love the most is I feel like everyone encounters God in different ways. Like for you, it's like hair cutting, like cutting people's hair. You get to cut people's hair, and that's like a way of ministry, or that's like a way of, serving others. And you're feeling like you're worshiping God in that sense. And I feel when I'm out on that race course, that's how I worship God. And there's just some type of presence that I get on race morning that's unlike anything else. And I don't, and this is, I mean, I don't know for the people watching this if they've like, are Christians or not, but when you truly feel the presence of God, there's just something that comes over you. And a lot of people, it's just super emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And I never get emotional just in like a worship set or just praying most of the time, at least.
Yeah.
But I could bet $1,000 that every morning I will be on my knees, absolutely bawling my eyes out, just feeling the Lord. And it was no different that morning, but it was just tenfold of what was normal.
Dang.
I just remember being out on that pier getting ready and racking my bike and getting all good. And I went up to a friend's hotel room to like change and get in my suit and kind of final prep and, eat a little more breakfast. And I told my dad to get out of the room, and I literally spent 20 minutes on the ground just bawling my eyes out and just feeling the presence of God. And I went down, and I'll never forget, I'm walking down these iconic steps into the Kona Bay, or the Kailua Bay at the pier.
Okay.
And I just remember looking up, and I was like, "Hey God, like this is me and you. Like the next 8 to 17 hours is me and you, and there's no one that can help me, and it's just us two." And I just remember looking up, and I could see my house from the pier, and I was like, it's a normal day at home.
Come on.
Like it's just another normal day of training, and let's go do it. And I remember sitting in the water and always hearing my dad say the same thing, and it was such a cool moment. Right before the gun goes off, you're floating in the water all on a line to start the swim. And there's the helicopters above, there's cameras everywhere, the cannon's about to go off, people lined up, thousands and thousands of people, and you're in the water. I get chicken skin just even thinking about it. But I just remember my dad always telling me, he's like, the best moment was right before, when I would float on my back and my ears would go underwater and it would just be silence. And you're just in silence in the chaos. And I just remember again, I floated on my back and just was like, okay, God, like I just felt so much silence and peace. And the race started, and I literally was like, it just was like the most joy, and you can probably see on my face, but like just the most joy I probably ever had in a day or in a race. Started the race and was swimming behind this guy that had an ankle tape on, and obviously probably had something wrong with his tape. And so in swimming, you can get a draft if you're swimming behind someone. And you touch their feet every once in a while. And every time I touched his ankle, I prayed for his ankle while we were swimming. And I just was like, it was just such a cool experience. And just being in my hometown, and it was just such a dream. And so, raced the whole day. Like there's so much even I could go into, but raced the whole day just in the presence of God. And I felt like I wasn't sick. I just felt completely normal, and had not the best race. And the reason behind that wasn't because I was feeling sick, but it was just like some simple nutrition mistakes that I made, but still had a good race, and I finished. At the finish line, just all the emotions again came out. But just it took me 9 hours and 58 minutes. And just those whole 9 hours and 58 minutes, it just was the presence of God like never before. And basically after that, I got sick again and haven't trained since. But so that's kind of led me into, meeting you and Joseph behind the camera. So it's a little,
That's crazy, bro. Like it makes me think like how much God shows up in our weaknesses, And it's like, dude, going through it, bro, you got freaking hit by a car, you got brain surgery, literally.
Yeah.
And then struggling with an illness, like an autoimmune disease.
Yeah. And
still, the presence of the Lord on race day, you finish that race.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like all that God shows up.
And I think one thing that's so interesting too is about 2 weeks later, all that blood result stuff came back. And my doctor, he's a believer, or from what it sounds like he is. He's like, Kaiden, it doesn't make sense. Like your blood is so bad. Like your hormones. So for Schmidy here, 21 years old, his main hormones, that I'm blanking on the exact name, but his main hormones that drive his body, he should be around 90 to 110. It would be like the count. I don't know exactly the scale, but he would be somewhere between 90 and 100, 110. I'm at 12. His VEGF hormone, which is your athletic hormone that drives your athletic skills and your endurance, which is exactly what I need. Schmidy here is probably at like a 70 to a 90. I'm at, I think, 9 or 8. And so my doctor said if I were to show this to any other doctor, they would, and they had to guess who I was, they would guess I'm a 90-year-old man who can't get out of bed. But I did a full Ironman.
Bro, that's so crazy. And I think it honestly paints such a good picture of faith and what faith is, bro. Because it's like, God is so much bigger than all of that. And but he calls us to have faith, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like us taking these little steps and him showing up in the bigger way. It's like faith without works is dead, right? But who does like, you know, like we're making these little steps, doing these little works, and then he shows up out of our obedience, out of our faith, right? And I think that paints such a good picture of faith, because it's like, dude, you're only at like whatever, like a super small percentage of what somebody your age should be at, you know, hormones wise. And it doesn't matter, bro. God comes in and he fills the rest, you know, like he is your strength and your weakness, you know? And it's like, bro, finishing that race, like doing that, like, and not even being able to feel like you could run a mile like a couple days before, like, bro, that's honestly blowing my mind right now, bro. Like, God is so good.
It's insane how he works, and when he shows up, you know, he always does show up in different ways, but that day he showed up,
dude, that's
in a pretty miraculous way, for sure.
But yeah, bro, finish the cut. I gotta have you check it out, bro.
Check it out
For real. Check it out.
Justin, you know, I'm not, before I even look, I know Schmidy did me right. So
come on.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're kind of looking for.
Trimmed it up, freshened it up, bro.
Yeah.
I still got to grab the baby hairs on the back. So, yeah, bro, just while we're wrapping up here, I'm just going to grab you. I'm just going to get your neck hairs real quick. But, yeah, so what are you up to now? You said you haven't raced since then, but, yeah, what's God doing right now, bro?
Yeah, so I did get diagnosed with that autoimmune disease that the doctor was talking about. And so now I'm on a pretty strict diet and protocol to get better. And yeah, just now God's really kind of shifted, and I've been sitting in on a class with YOM, or Youth with a Mission, called Frontlines. And just, you know, learning and deepening my relationship with God. And starting in April, I'm doing, it's called a DBS, where I'm reading through the whole Bible in 3 months. And yeah, I just feel like God's just doing a lot right now. You know, even really walking with God in my career that I've had so far, and hopefully get to have again, you know, is I still found my identity partially wrapped in how good I was, or like that was who I was, you know, is like I was the guy that did triathlons, but that's truly not who I am, you know, that's just something that I do. So yeah, I feel like God's just really working on me with that right now. And yeah, I'm just excited for the next 3 months of reading through the whole Bible, and something I've never done before. So yeah.
That's so lit, bro. It makes me think, like, you know, God, he gave you that race, right? And you know, like, you've seen his power, you've been in his presence, you know how good he is.
Yeah.
And now it's like he's kind of saying, now I showed you that. Now come pursue me, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, now you're in a season of, you know, like pursuing the Lord. You're laying the triathlon things, the training, all that down. And you get to pursue the Lord.
Yeah.
And, you know, I truly believe that you're going to be fully healed one day.
Yeah.
And back to it. But like, God wants you, you know, like,
Yeah,
God doesn't want your athletic ability. He doesn't want the things that he wants you. It's like right now you get to just pursue the Lord and have that. That's such a gift too, bro.
For sure.
Like,
for sure.
That's so awesome, bro.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for what God's doing, and just the ways that he's moving, bro. Like, it's truly remarkable.
Yeah. Thanks, bro. All good?
Dude, you just got got a sick little haircut, man.
Thanks for the chat. Good.
Dude, fun times, man. Schmidy Cutz.
Cutz.
Let's get a 360 real quick.